Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, and welcome to this evening's Development Management Committee meeting. Do we have any apologies? No apologies, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest?
Sorry. Chair?
Go on then.
I'm a ward councillor in that area. So
Non-pecuniary.
yeah.
It's part of my ward for Essex County Council.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe you to declare. Fine. Okay, moving on. Minutes which appear on pages 3 to 5 of your agenda papers. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Any matters arising? No? Lovely. We have no written questions, so I'm just going to outline the procedure for tonight's meeting. We'll start with the planning officer presenting the report, the officer report. We will then move on to comments which have been invited from members of the public who have registered with us to speak. There is a maximum of 3 against an application and 3 for an application. Following that, the agent would also be, or the applicant would be entitled to speak as well. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Once that section's done, we'll move on to councillors' questions and clarifications. Officers will respond to any technical planning questions raised by members, and then we will then move to a debate and a decision. I'd like to draw your attention to the supplementary agenda item, which removes agenda item 8 from this evening's planning papers, and also to the other supplementary item, which brings in another objection to number 7, the service industry bays at the Stow on pages 6 to 3. So, moving on to agenda item 7. Would you like to present the report, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As the Chair said, a late representation was received from St Andrew's Church and is therefore not reflected in the officer's report, and the issues raised have not been assessed, therefore. Representation has been sent to members. The Church was sent a letter on the 30th of August 2017, and there have been no amendments to the design since then. Officers has assumed that the Church had no concerns with the part of the proposal that backs onto the Church's sidewall. Also, officers had no knowledge that there was one memorial tree, as there was no plaque. However, that is not a planning issue and cannot be considered as a reason for refusing the planning application. But if officers had known earlier on, through negotiation, this might have been able to be taken into account. However, members need to consider the proposal that's been presented to them to committee to tonight. The proposal is for the redevelopment of the existing service bays, the employment use, into a mixed-use development comprising of 87 number 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, 11 living work units, and 660 square metres of B1 use, which incorporates undercroft car parking, a mews courtyard and residential gardens. The area of the proposal is outlined in red. It does not include these bays which are not part, and they remain, and they're not part of the development. The aerial photograph shows Aldi to the north. This is Howard's Way to the west. You've got the church to the south, and the car parking, the existing car parking which isn't affected, the Stow to the east. The proposal is for a mixed use, as explained. The living areas, work living areas are situated to the south of the development. The B1 uses are situated to the east of the development, fronting the car parking spaces, and the fronting Howard's Way and Aldi of the residential. The car parking is in the middle of the site. On the first floor, you'll find above the car parking is the green open space that's for shared for the residents, and there's private gardens for the live-work units and the residential units there. The live-work units are 3 stories in height. On the second floor, it's now all residential, completely round, except for the live-work units have the final part. For the third floor, as this development is 4 stories in height, but the third floor is only on the west side and the north side of the development. It is not on the south side nearest the church. It's only 2 stories. And the fourth, the highest part of the development, is to the northwest as an entrance into down, when you come down to pass to the Stow, as a keynote entrance building. As seen from the elevations, looking into the entrance of the development, which is from the existing car park of the Stow, this is where the existing and retained work units are here, and this is the entrance in to the new proposal. Once you're in the proposal, this is the line that backs onto Howard's Way. This is Howard's Way, which will front Howard's Way. As I said, the 4-storey block is right at the end by Aldi, and then it progressively reduces in height down to towards the church at this end, which is situated here. Within the development, as you come in through the access, at the end stop of the access, you have these units. This unit is the back, the other side of that, and this is where the church is beside here. The car parking, although there is the car parking is not meeting the Essex car parking standards, however, in areas that are single locations such as this, it is accepted the fact that you can have lower car parking requirements. So Essex Highways have not objected to the application. Also, the SPD for the Stow also identified that there could be a lower car parking provision. There are some tree removals. The hedge that fronts along here is to be removed, and these trees along here, some of the trees along the cherry trees along the front, and here the group that's by the church are to be removed. But there is a landscape condition which is required to replace these trees, and as most of them are fairly old cherry trees, then we get some new ones put along the front as part of the landscaping. The existing service bays, as you can see, are relatively run down, and therefore officers consider this will bring back the regeneration of the centre. The existing residential units of the Stow can be seen here. The development will go up to the end of the line of the existing service area, and then, as you can see, the distance is the residential area of the Stow beyond. This is the standing in the facing the car park. We were in the entrance of St Andrews. Again, here's the residential area, and the entrance to the development is here. And here again is a similar one where the residential is at the end, existing residential. The other residential is St Andrew's House, which is here. That fronts onto the retained, and it's these units that will be retained in the proposal, because it's this site here that's being redeveloped. Oops. And this is the area beside the church which the development comes into. Here's the hedge that's being removed so that you get a clean frontage on. And these are the trees that are being removed along Howard's Way. To give you a better feel for it, we've got the computer-generated images. Here is the outline of those units that are being retained, but you go into the development and it's through there, that archway, into where the underground car parking is behind these units. And there's an additional unit being added on to the existing units, which is this unit here, and it links through to the main complex. These are the live-work units along the bottom. Coming in, if you come in through the entrance or looking out towards the entrance to the development, this is the courtyard internally. This is the unit that backs onto the church is here. This is the unit looking out of that little courtyard towards Howard's Way on the other side, and here's the unit that rests against the church. The church is much higher than this. It's the same height as the existing unit. And this is the proposal on Howard's Way as it reduces in height towards the church. St Andrew's House is the nearest to this development, which is about 25 metres, as shown, to the existing industrial units, which are being retained in the front. Therefore, we have no concerns about the impact of the proposal to the residential amenity. St Andrew's Church is the closest building to the proposal. Officers consider that the proposal would act as a catalyst to help regenerate the Stow, and the provision of the live-work units and the B1 units would respect the original purpose of the service bays. This is balanced against the viability issue, which means that the affordable housing provision is not met. However, there will be a clawback mechanism in the Section 06 to enable more affordable housing if viability improves. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in pages 20 and 21 of the report, and the applicant entering into a legal agreement.
Thank you very much. We have 3 speakers against this application, so I'd like to call Peter Mount-Stephen first, please. Peter, if you could take a seat and press whichever colour button it is, which turns the microphone on in front of you.
We get the red one on.
And then you'll have 3 minutes.
Sorry, I've only done that.
This has already been sent.
We've already got this. So
This is what I've been with the church. I'll take all observations and objection.
okay.
Right, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the former planning officer with Harrow Council. I'm here in my capacity as recent property and finance committee minute secretary for St Andrew's Methodist Church.
Could you move the microphone nearer? Thank you.
Great is the darkness that covers the earth. This is the first time one of my favourite lines that sprang to mind on my first sight of the revision C plans and elevations for the redevelopment of the Stow service bays, in particular with regard to 3 live-work units and 5 car parking spaces being very close proximity to the obscure glazed prayer chapel and Mr. Vestry, north-facing windows to the rear of St Andrew's Methodist Church. This free church, completed in 1954, was intended to be the church hall, but in the 1970s the original scheme for a more imposing church nave with a separate slim tower feature was abandoned in favour of the block of 3-storey flats, which is St Andrew's House. This was managed by Springboard Housing Association. The informal open space, which I'm concerned about, was designed by Sir Frederick Gillard's Development Corporation team of planners and landscape architects to separate the vestries from the then, it was Hitchman's Dairy originally, rather a loud operation, which probably only disturbed the dawn chorus. Jade, in this monumental committee report, has reported that the site at the Stow service bays has the capacity to accommodate 70 dwellings as set out in the Stow SPD of 2016, which in principle sought to enhance the public realm while outlining aspirations for the return to the Stow. I was concerned that the total loss proposed of the informal open space, containing 3 flowering cherries and 1 Swedish white bean, which was planted in memory of Mark Phillips, who was a colleague of mine in 1988, a Methodist from Doncaster, who served the council very deftly as a junior barrister until his untimely death in 1995. I will offer £1 to rehome Mark's tree, albeit in a coppiced, four-stemmed condition, hopefully in his home borough of Doncaster, where my son Christopher now resides. If 2 of the nearby service bays should be occupied by, say, a coffee dealer or a Ceylon tea dealer, I'm concerned that those would be ideal neighbours for the church. I was concerned that a 49% vehicle parking space standard per unit would not permit access by customers seeking to purchase such firms' excellent products. These are my individual observations only, as St Andrew's annual church meeting is not until after the local elections on the 2nd of May. As in 2016, I expect my successor to raise no objections, provided it is not necessary for the joint entrance gates to the church and St Andrew's house to be closed and locked, as is the case at North Chingford Methodist Church, Station Road. Thank you for listening. Au revoir.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you. That was as near as I could get to.
Good. Take your seat, that'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Lovely. If I call, leave it on. Could I call the Reverend Blair Kirkby, please?
I have nothing to add, no.
You've got nothing to add?
I don't.
You're happy? Okay. We've got one other speaker then, which is Trula Hall. Did you want to come and speak?
Yeah, I haven't got a...
You've got 3 minutes, so whatever you want to say, we'll listen.
Okay, so I was informed...
Take a seat.
It's planning, and I'm not really good with planning, but I am a resident of the Stow, and my house is directly opposite that. My garden actually will look onto that, or however they will look onto my garden, reducing my privacy by 100%. I'm already very overlooked as it is. I have also just heard something about the car parking spaces. In all due respect, there is no residential parking as there is at the moment. We have no designated parking spaces at all, and the fact that you're going to build 87 flats that don't have enough parking, I would ask you, where do you expect them to park as well? We have a lot of problems with antisocial behaviour in the Stow. I do feel that if you're going to cram these flats full of people, it's only going to hinder the problem. You know, obviously, the history of the Stow and what's happened there. I've lived there for 15 years, my heart is in this area, and I do think that this will impact greatly, not in a good way, on the residents that have already put up with us so very much. So really that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, so we now call Jenny Mack, who we believe is the agent for this. Again, you'll have 3 minutes, Jenny.
Thank you very much for your time. As a possible catalyst and precedent for future development of the Stow, we sought dialogue with the planners from a very early stage up to planning submission, and notably with Place Services, the authors of the approved master plan, to ensure a reasonable continuation of the principles set out in the SPD. Along this continual cycle of discussion, response and review with the planning team and urban designers as outlined in the DMA, we also consulted with other statutory and local authority bodies and local stakeholders, including the church, who were supportive of the scheme when we consulted with them in 2017. The planner, the urban designer and the church were all happy with the relationship with the church, and actually once we were in for planning we received few objections, but we maintained this dialogue and responded to all comments that were received. namely the waste strategy, the parking provision and affordable housing provision as discussed. The parking provision has been reallocated in accordance with the planner's comments to increase the wheelchair spaces and provide dedicated B1 spaces. This has been achieved and now all residential parking is contained entirely within the development curtilage. With the affordable housing, we discussed and agreed on a 4% provision based on 98 units, therefore including both dwellings and live-work units in addition to policy. The assessment doesn't factor in significant rises in construction costs since its commissioned 12 months ago. However, the applicant has agreed to honour these figures to work with the council on this. It also works with higher values from the regeneration, which is not normal. So overall, the scheme is actually less viable than what we're demonstrating. So we have discussed ways to increase affordability where we could. There are two options. We could increase the number of dwellings overall to make the build cost more cost effective and get more affordable units, but of course this would affect car parking ratios. Or we could compromise on the quality of the build or the size of units, for example, or even the types of units. So we have agreed and negotiated on what we hope is the highest quality scheme that we can provide to you today. And this takes into account all of the comments that we received and the dialogue that we've had with the planners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Councillor Garner.
Thank you, do you know how many car parking spaces are in the existing car park opposite this development?
No, that's one thing I didn't look up.
There
are quite a large number there.
Okay.
That is a public car park, obviously, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a public car park.
Anybody else? Councillor Clark?
A feature of the town are the avenues of trees, and I just wondered, could you clarify what's happening along Howard Way? I think you said there's a removal of the trees there.
Yes.
Are they replaced there, or?
Yes, the trees need to be removed because they're too close to the frontage of the building, and they're potentially blocking up the light and that sort of thing. So, and some of the trees that are getting past their lifespan, because cherry trees have a relatively short lifespan. Because there is quite a lot of verge there, we consider that through the landscape plan we'll be actually able to increase the number of trees down that line, but we're further out away from the properties, and also there are other opportunities in some of the areas there to be able to add trees. So that is part of the condition that we put, that we want the landscape proposals, which is what we always do with applications afterwards. And we, as the officer says in their report, will ensure there's more trees added into the site, and then you'll have a longer lifespan as well to continue on.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hardwick?
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the 4% affordable and the clawback, can you explain the timing of when the viability is relooked at, and also whether, obviously, the sales prices will change by that time, but also the costs are looked at as well?
Because we haven't yet written the Section 106, finalised it, I can't tell you when the kicking mechanisms are. But normally we tend to review it when especially when the first sale starts on the properties, because that gives you the real value of the development, as opposed to sort of projecting at the moment, or as explained by the agent, they agree that a higher level because of the regeneration in the area would give a better value than if you tried to value the properties now at the current time. So therefore, to ensure the fact that we can benefit in the future, increase the value of that area, we review the viability studies and see if a higher percentage then comes out.
Councillor Sutton?
Thank you, Chair. For argument's sake, if this planning application is approved, when they're demolishing the old buildings, is there some way, a mechanism with containing the dust into the environment? Because you're nearer to houses.
They have to come up with a demolition. One of the conditions is to come up with the demolition proposals, and the environmental health section, check with that, we check with them the proposals in order to reduce the dust and come up with mitigation measures. We can't eliminate the dust, but yeah, it's something that's well and truly looked into, and environmental health get involved in.
Councillor Garner.
Coming back to the coming back to the clawback situation. Some of these units may well be rented out, the B1 units. Would the rental be taken into consideration on the review of the fire?
If those properties are rented out rather than sold, everything's taken into account. Everything that is being put into the viability calculation will be taken into consideration.
Councillor Edwards.
I understand that the church had some concerns about the impact of the position of the buildings in relation to the building of the church, and because they're not shown on the position of the church isn't shown on any of these diagrams in terms of, so there's no
trying to find there's the position of the church.
I mean, I know what the position is, but sorry, I'm wanting to see what the visual impact will, what the impact will be, and there's nowhere in those plans, as far as I can see, that shows it, of the new development on the church and on the church buildings, because my understanding was that in terms of the supplementary report that was put in, that the church had some objections because of the potential impact on the, and I was trying to, and I'm having difficulty visualising that. So my question is, I suppose, is there any way that I can be assisted?
That is the nearest you can be assisted. But this is the back of, is representative, would be the back of the church,
right?
And this would be the single story. This is the two-story. It's out of proportion because this should be up here.
Yeah.
But it represents, it's the nearest thing I could find that represents the two-story part of the church and the single part of the church. This new unit will overlap the church two-story part, which has got two windows there at the moment, which is there. So currently the existing units finish there,
right.
And the new unit will go in sort of here,
right.
If you can imagine it. So the new unit will be there.
Right.
And then the courtyard that I showed you in the seat is there, and then another unit, so at the end of this wall, this will continue along here as a development, with another unit sort of being there. That's the nearest I can offer to you. Is that CG?
I mean, I appreciate the church is not a residential building, etc., but I was just wanting to sort of see whether or not their objections were reasonable ones.
So that building will be beside the single story, the end, the last bit of the church bit that fronts Howard Way. That building will be at the end of it, onto it, joining onto it. And that is joining, this is the building that joins onto the church on the other side. So that's the nearest I can show you.
I'm going to get tonight. It's just.
Well, I think there are drawings if you needed to see them.
Yeah.
There's drawings in the box.
Are there?
Yeah. Or you've got them attached to your reports as well.
Right.
You've got these are the drawings you have, and the elevations.
Yeah, but it doesn't show the church on that.
No, it doesn't show the church on that.
The difficulty I have is quite often is when you get new buildings shown, they're not shown in relation to existing buildings, and it's about trying to get the, whether or not there's an overlap or whether or not it impinges. Because come on, the debate about this is going to be about relevance in terms of setting.
Yeah, the church will be here.
Councillor Holcock.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. One is to relate to what Tony just been saying about the back of the church. Did I not see windows, 3 windows in that back section?
Yep.
They'd be completely blocked. So light would be non-productive in that area because the windows would be black in the other building. The other one I was going to mention, another one of the shots you had, there were small companies in the bays that were there right now.
There's no small companies in any of the
there's
bays.
no
No.
bays.
As I said, these bays, which the ones that are occupied, have been retained.
Right, okay.
Most of all these have been emptied out.
It's
They've
empty.
gone long ago.
Okay, so there's no one left in there anywhere
I
that
can't-
needs to be re-housed.
As far as I'm aware, there are none. I mean, they're all closed as far as I'm concerned. I can't say that there might be some there, but the majority of working ones would have had an open door.
Okay, so there's no one that's going to be in trouble when it's being built because they're no longer...
No, the last one was the park, I think it was the dog grooming park, which you gave planning permission for them to be in the car park.
Yeah, okay.
Who's next?
Have we got a slide that shows how the development overlooks Andrew's house? Because the lady was mentioning about the light disappearing.
No, where she, I believe, and she correct, that's a pink block of flats that you're living in, which, what am I doing? Which are those ones here, and they give you an idea. This is where the development will stop, and that's where although I don't think it's that block, but it's in line with that block that you live, I think. Yeah. So the development is here, and that's the distance to the flats. I'm not sure where your garden is. I think are the gardens here? Yeah. So
That's in the Stow then? Not
yeah, right across, past the car park, across this park on the other side.
Yeah. So I mean that would be outside of the prescribed areas.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, Councillor Hardware.
Thank you, Chair. Just spotted this item 2 of your informatives, which says water supplies and sprinkler systems should be incorporated for additional protection against firefighting. I think that needs to be worded to assist firefighting. That's the first point. The second point is this our planning advice, or is that from the fire authority?
No, that's our advice. That's as far as we can go.
I visited the site today, and it certainly needs rebuilding. You know, the area needs a certain amount. But the car parking was one issue, which was quite substantial problem. Now I'm looking at the provision. I know about sustainable development and all that, but you know we've got, I think there's 98. I'm trying to find what figures I've used here. But we've got 74 parking spaces for residents and 7 parking spaces for the disabled for the parking for the B1 units, which I worked out in what we should be having is something like 98. Because obviously there's disabled parking, but that doesn't, and there's no visitors provisions. There is this small parking area across the road, which is, if ever I try to get in there, is normally packed. There's yellow lines everywhere, so this is going to be horrendous for people, but then that's a different side of this. Sorry, I've got myself lost here now. Looking at the planning policies, BE1, BE2 and BE3, character and identity. New and extended buildings should relate to their strength, enhance, protect or create local character. I'm not sure it does that. Quality, legibility and public realm. Permission for major new developments will be granted when new buildings are designed as part of group related to sense of enclosure. You're really the church because they're so close to the church. So the church will get developed, you know, in the case of the development. And then I also take up BE3, sustainable development. At the very end of that it says where is it? In a sustainable location relative to activity of supporting services and or employment sites, does not result in overdevelopment, is compatible with the character of the area and urban design policies. Without doubt, this is overdevelopment of that area.
Yeah.
You know, it needs development, but they're trying to shoehorn in enough. I understand where they're coming from, because they've got to make a profit, or try and make a profit. So they're trying to put as much in as they can, but by doing it, it's overdevelopment. It's causing all sorts of parking problems, which we're all being. We have to pick it up when residents ring up and complain. So to me, I find there's enough here not to grant it. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Yes, I won't repeat what Mike's Fangio said. I mean, the area does need regeneration, there's no doubt about that. But I do consider this is an example of overdevelopment. I agree the main reason really is proximity to the church, as has been outlined by Mr. Mount Stephen. And that goes counter to B1, B2 without elaborating on those reasons. There is limited car parking spaces without any provision for visitors, as Mike has argued himself. I'm very concerned indeed about the 4% affordable housing, which I personally think is quite an insult when we have a policy of 30%. But those are the main reasons I have. Okay, we're not going to get away with the viability argument on housing, affordable housing, but I still think they've made no effort whatsoever, in spite of the fact that it's developed to a high level. Nevertheless, there's only 4% of affordable housing. I think is pathetic, frankly. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. My thoughts are that certainly that area needed redevelopment. That's not without question. And I certainly agree with Councillor Garland that I think it's toothless. The church, they're blocking out the lighting in the church. And the car parking area is just not enough. I think there's just too much there. It does need redevelopment, but I think in this case it's just a little bit a step too far. That's how I feel about it.
Councillor Hoppett.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree. I mean, when I questioned the windows in the back of the church, 3 of them, I wouldn't expect to have it in modern design, to have a building that's literally on those, almost on those windows. There's not a lot of breathing space between. So I think that because of that reason, I don't think you should build anything that is close to buildings in that capacity. It's not necessary. We do need redevelopment there. We certainly do. Residential is part and parcel of what we're doing now with the bays underneath. That's a lot of things are going that way. Parking's another issue that I'm thinking of, because with visitors, etc., the small car park across the way is not going to make it. It's chaotic around there at the best of times, and I just think this is going too far with the development. We've got RT, CS, all proposals must respect the existing character of things around it. That is not respecting the character of the church and the things around it. So I can't vote this one through. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the council spent a lot of money in trying to revitalise the Stow area to make it a nice place to shop. And as you say, the car park's always full, so I hope that's going in the right direction. We obviously need housing, but I very seldom agree with Councillor Garnett. But tonight, I do agree with his reasoning for not allowing this development because of the reasons of the B1, B2 and S6 or whatever it's called. I don't think it really helps the area at all. It causes too many problems to existing tenants and to the church, and I think we should not let this go through.
Anybody else? Councillor Hardware.
Thank you, Chair. Always like to go last. This site, I've been to this site and it is bloody awful. It needs a lot of work doing to it, obviously. But the proposals put forward only have 4% affordable. To increase that, they'd have to go up higher, put more units on, which wouldn't help the situation at all. I was quite neutral about this development until a picture was put up of the frontage onto the road, which, if you'd like to put up, I'll just explain.
What the
The
computer images
Howard
or
Way.
the...
Onto the, yeah, that's that one. That to me looks like overdevelopment. That is far too imposing on the road. Of course, that's not a planning argument, but that's what the impression I get. The parking. Parking is a big issue in Harlow, always has been. I mean, there is plans for the government to try and reduce car usage, but it isn't going to happen anytime soon. So if we agreed this, we'd have a development with 90 odd, more than 90 odd units, everybody with a car with nowhere to park. So it will spread out into the local residents and they'll all get upset. But the thing which is the clincher to me, which is why I'll go against it, is the relationship with the church. That really could have been thought out better and done better. And on that basis, on the balance of things, I'm going to go against it.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak? Okay. In that case, members, if we could move to the vote, the recommendations 1 to 17, which appear on pages 20 to 24 of your order paper, and informatives 1 to 7 on pages 24 and 25. All of those in favour of those recommendations? All of those against? That is unanimously rejected. So just to clarify, the reasons for rejection are B1, 2, 3,
16.
Yeah. Get all those?
Yep. Page 5, which is the affordable housing.
No.
I'll do that. Parking.
Okay. Right. Moving back